guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I want to talk to you about the things that I think are wrong with the zero waste movement. There are some inherent flaws in the zero waste movement that I want to sort of have a sort of informal chat about. These are things that people are aware of, but I think on a smaller level than perhaps they ought to be, and that people don't really consider when they're trying to go zero waste or when they're producing zero waste content for social media platforms or for media outlets and things of that nature. And I think these things need to be discussed, they need to be thought about, and they need to be addressed. So the first thing I want to talk about is disability accessibility. So whenever a zero waste conversation comes up, you get millions of people jumping on the bandwagon and saying, you know, these products exist and it's so ridiculous, it's just an example of our wasteful consumerist society. And in actual fact, a lot of those products exist for people with disabilities, and they exist for people who cannot do those things that you just take for granted that you can physically do for yourself. So for example, straws. Straws were invented in a hospital setting. They're actually a medical device. They always were. You know, now they're used in commercial applications like, you know, fast food restaurants and cocktail bars and things. But their primary purpose was to enable people who couldn't use their hands or were lying down to safely drink liquids in hospital bed scenario. I mean, that's what they were there for, and that's why the top bends over and everything, is so that when you're lying flat, someone can bring the drink to your lips in a more sustainable way. Before that, they used to have a piece of cloth wrapped around a stick that they used to dip in a bucket of water and dribble the water into people's mouths. You know, plastic straws were the answer to this problem, and so just blanket banning plastic straws is never going to be the answer, because they exist for a reason and they're needed in that capacity. And there are so many more applications that they've come to be used in, particularly in the sort of special educational needs setting, people on the autistic spectrum, people with sensory issues where they can't stand the feel or the texture of certain things, and they need to use a straw to drink. There are so many different applications where these are medical devices, these are, you know, accessibility aids, these are things that enable people to actually get the liquid that they need to live. You know, we cannot survive without water. It's just never going to be the case that blanket banning plastic straws is going to be the answer. And it's something that once you've been in the zero waste community for a while, you know, you'll have heard it enough times about plastic straws and you'll get the message. But it applies to so many other, you know, frivolous products as well. Things like pre-chopped oranges that have had all the skins peeled off and they've already been separated into segments. You know, if you've got arthritis and you can't use the joints in your fingers and things anymore, these things just suddenly go off the table for you. You cannot you know, do these things for yourself anymore. These products actually are a lifesaver, because it means that you can suddenly access all of these different foodstuffs once they've been pre-prepared for you and packaged in a way that you can actually open, that suddenly you've got access to all sorts of different fresh fruits and vegetables and things that otherwise the preparation of would be too much effort, and you wouldn't be able to eat them. And especially if you consider that a lot of people who are suffering with joint issues and with mobility issues in their hands particularly are the elderly, a lot of whom live alone. There's no one there to do these things for them. In so many cases, you know, they're on their own, they're in this isolation setting, and they need to be able to access basic foodstuffs, particularly healthy foods like fruit and vegetables, which usually do require some form of preparation in order to, you know, cook or consume. So I think it's very important that we remember the disabled and the accessibility issues surrounding things, when we start talking about the government should blanket ban this, and these things just shouldn't be allowed, or stores shouldn't sell this stuff anymore, there's a reason these things exist, and it's not just laziness. And going out and writing nasty comments on pictures of certain products doesn't help anybody. It doesn't actually stop companies from producing it, because there's a market need for it, and the market need for it is primarily not lazy people. It's people who need those products for whatever reason. That's why they were invented in the first place. So I think the accessibility and disability slating by many zero wasters is a real issue within the movement, and is something that really needs to be thought about more carefully before people go online and start becoming keyboard warriors. The second thing that I think is wrong with the zero waste movement is that it's become all about the aesthetic. So, having the perfect props, having the perfect look for things, rather than actually the deep and meaningful stuff, the actual impactful stuff, which is what you're not buying, what you're not consuming, what you're not doing, and making do with whatever you've got, even if it doesn't look right, even if it's not the right thing, and buying second-hand versions of things, even if they don't look right, even if they don't fit the aesthetic, even if they're not, beautiful to look at. So you see pictures of zero wasters, and they've all got the beautiful cupboards completely cleaned out and just filled with mason jars and things, and it's all matching and uniform, and it's all colour coordinated, and you've got sort of the white and the pastel peach and the eucalyptus green, and it's all very calming and minimalist and aesthetic, but it's not necessarily really zero waste to do that. If you truly want to be zero waste, you'll be reusing your plastic Tupperwares. You won't throw them away and replace them with bamboo or glass or stainless steel. You'll keep using the old plastic things that you've got. You'll get stuff from the second-hand shops. You'll get stuff that your relatives, your friends, your family are going to be discarding, and you'll be using those things. This has particularly come up recently with regards to children's toys, trying to do zero waste baby stuff, and all the zero waste baby stuff is like, I'll buy this new organic cotton version of the onesie, buy this new wooden baby toy, buy this new wooden baby rattle, and actually go to the second-hand store and get the plastic ones that would otherwise be going into landfill. There's absolutely no reason to go out and buy new versions of things when they just happen to be made of a more sustainable material, when there's so many plastic versions of that are sitting ready to go into landfill and things. And if you can save those from going to landfill and extend the lifespan of those items, then you're actually doing more for the planet rather than consuming the resources from these more sustainable materials. That wood that the baby rattle was made from, that's still got to be grown, it's got to take water, it's got to have all of that manufacturing, processing, the energy that's required to actually manufacture it, the shipping, carbon emissions from shipping the raw material to be processed, and then the processed wood to the artisan who's going to create the item, and then from the artisan to the shop where you're going to buy it from the shop to your home. There's so many different steps in a production chain making new items that actually the very first thing that you should always be doing is going second hand, and getting things gifted to you from friends and family, and going to second hand and charity and thrift stores and buying the things that have already been used and extending their lifespan so they don't end up in landfill. And I think the aesthetic argument of it's got to look right for my Instagram posts is so damaging, because it's so unrealistic, and it actually is counter to the real goals of the movement. So it's something that really winds me up. I'm never going to look like the zero waste aesthetic. My life is never going to look like those Instagram posts, because I actually believe in walking the walk, not talking the talk. I'm going to get things that don't match. Nothing's going to be pretty and coordinated and perfectly put together in this sort of ideal aesthetic. It's going to be what I can find, what's the least environmentally damaging and brought together, and what's practical and functional and can be used to actually answer those needs in the most environmentally friendly way. And the whole aesthetic element really irritates me, partly because it's unattainable, and it's sort of this aspirational thing that you should be trying to attain this, and when you're actually doing it properly you can't, and it can make you feel really downbeat and disheartened because you're not having this, you know, glamorous zero waste lifestyle that you see people on Instagram having. Your zero waste looks a lot tattier. So the aesthetic side of things really, I think, is a problem within the zero waste movement. And I think the third thing that's wrong with the movement and with society in general is the emphasis on virtue signalling. So virtue signalling is essentially telling other people all the time how good you are and what great things you're doing and how amazing you are, in a way that projects what you want other people to think of you out onto them. And it's not necessarily doing things that actually make a difference. It's doing things that other people will see and notice. Doing things that are visible rather than things that are invisible. And I think this is a problem in many contexts, not just in the zero waste movement. It's a societal issue that we face, particularly with social media. But I think it's always been there. It's always something that's existed within our culture. But I think within the zero waste movement, as long as the camera's only focused on the part of your home that is zero waste, or the part of your shopping that is zero waste, or you're cropping out the parts that don't fit into what you're trying to convey about yourself, and ignoring the the dirty little secrets for this sort of ability to project that you're doing things really well when you're not necessarily doing things really well. And I think it gives other people the wrong impression. I think it's causing a lot of mental health issues. You scroll through your social media feeds and you'll see that everyone else is doing things so much better than you are. They're doing such a much better job of success in life, whether that's financial success, whether that's going on nice holidays, whether that's that they've got that perfect beach body, or their clothes look really nice, or whether it's that they seem to be a better parent, or they seem to have a better career. Whatever the things that you're looking at and taking from these virtue signalling things, it's damaging because it makes you feel worse about yourself. But I think it's also damaging because it makes people feel self-righteous. And self-righteous preaching, self-righteous judgment, self-righteous sort of indignation about how other people aren't doing things as well as I'm doing them, and they're all failing at doing this, and aren't I good because I'm doing such a much better job than everyone else out there. It's the worst possible way to convert people to your cause. I think this has been a major issue within the vegan community, for example, that everyone who's not in the vegan community sees the vegan community as really militant and really self-righteous and really preachy. And you'll know someone's a vegan because they'll tell you 12 times in one conversation. And that perception from people who are outside of the movement is not helpful, because if anything, people who are vegan want to convert other people to become vegans because they believe in it fundamentally. They are fundamentally activists. And it's the same within the zero waste community. If you're bothering to do all of this, you kind of want other people to be doing it all. not necessarily the same things as you, not necessarily to the same level as you, but you want other people to feel passionately about it too. And virtue signalling doesn't do that. What virtue signalling does is it makes other people feel guilty, it makes them feel bad. And when people feel these negative emotions about how, brilliant you think you are, or how brilliant you are, or whatever, in comparison to themselves, and it makes them feel worse about themselves, then they close off and they don't want to know, and they're not going to be interested in what you've got to say. They're not going to be interested in what you're doing. I think it's much, much more powerful to just live by example. Just do the things that you do, that you believe in, and other people will see that, and they'll take it on board. But they'll take it on board in such a way that it's not forcing them to do it if they don't feel they're able to do it. It just gives them an idea that it's possible to live differently. It's possible to do these things. And if they're so inclined, they know where you are. They know that, you've got the information on how to do it and so on. And I mean, you can talk about the things that you're passionate about, but you should never be talking about things in the situation that I'm so perfect and I'm doing such a great job at these things, because nobody's perfect and nobody's doing anything 100% brilliantly. There is no such thing as perfection, and it really depends on what your quality parameters are. What are your assessment criteria? What are your priorities, your value structure and everything, and that's going to be subjective and vary between different people. So there's no such thing as being the best zero waste person in the world. Nobody's really doing zero waste properly. Nobody's really doing it well, and if they are doing one aspect of it well, then they're maybe not doing another aspect of it so well. So the zero waste community tends to focus more on physical waste to landfill, on the use of say plastics and things that don't biodegrade, that have to end up in landfill. And that's not necessarily taking into account the whole environmental picture, because just within wanting to be environmentally friendly, you've got the waste that goes to landfill, you've got the costs of production, whether that's in water, whether that's in fuel usage and carbon emissions and things, whether that's in air miles, whether that's in ethical trading for the production of those things. So is it a fair trade item? Is it essentially using child labour, or using underpaid workforce, or workforce who are in poor working conditions? There's all these different ethical and environmental questions around every aspect of that, and you have to weigh up which of those are most important to you to decide which decisions you make. So for example, when I went to Loose in Stroud, the zero waste shop there, I did an interview about that on this channel, and we talked about how she had to make decisions between buying dried fruit that she could get in bulk, and it was really zero waste and low rubbish production, but it was being shipped from China, or she could get stuff that was locally produced but it created a lot more waste. And which of those things was the bigger concern, and which was the things her customers would want her to do, which of those are their highest priority. And it just really drums home the point that every single decision you make in the zero waste lifestyle, you're making decisions between these different factors and weighing up which are the most important. So there is no perfect to this, there never can be. And this sort of virtue signalling that everyone else should be choosing the things that I'm choosing is invalidating their decision-making process, because they might decide that actually, financial considerations are more important to them, or ethical considerations are more important to them than environmental considerations. So they'd rather buy the fair trade thing that's shipped in from an African country or from a South American country or something, an Asian country that's coming a further long way, but it's providing necessary financial and ethical income supplies to people in countries that don't necessarily have ready access to such ethical employment, and so it's a really good thing ethically. So you can't judge other people on what choices they're making. All you can do is live your best version of what you think is important, and just get on with what you're doing, and not be competing, not be keeping up with Joneses all the time. So I think the virtue signalling, it's a very dangerous thing to be such a core piece of our society and our culture at the moment, and I think it's really dangerous. I think it's become quite evident to a lot of people that it's dangerous during this particular health crisis that's been going on, where people are quite happy to go out and clap for carers and things like that, where they can show that they're doing things that are the right things and so on, but they're not necessarily doing the things that are actually really important, like washing their hands and not going out and socially distancing. And the important stuff that doesn't necessarily get seen is ranked lesser than the virtue signalling activities that do get seen and that get judged, and where your neighbours are going to say, oh, so and so doing their thing, or judging what everyone else is doing around them. And I think it's become quite evident to a lot of people that actually walking the walk is far more important than talking the talk, and the quiet things that you do in private are actually far more important than the loud, brash statement things that you do in public or that you shout about on your social media. It's all the little, seemingly insignificant details that actually make the impact, and not the beautiful aesthetic picture of all your mason jars lined up nicely in your pristine, aesthetically laid out cupboards. It's the decisions that you make at the supermarket when you're doing your weekly shop, not how you store your produce. It's the decisions that you make about where to go on holiday, how to raise your children, what kind of career you're going to have, every aspect of life, what kind of clothes you're going to wear, what kind of things you're going to give to people as Christmas and birthday gifts and so on, how you're going to treat your neighbours. These things are more important than having the perfect zero waste picture box lifestyle. So anyway, that's my 2 pence on what's wrong with the zero waste movement. It's a bit of a rant, but it's something that I've been thinking about for quite a long time, and that's particularly been bothering me lately, and that I wanted to discuss, because I think it's important, and I think it's always important to evaluate where you are with something and how you feel about it, and whether or not it still aligns with your beliefs. And I think the reality of the zero waste movement aligns with my beliefs, but what it's turned into in popular culture doesn't. And that upsets me. I don't like the fact that I feel such a discord between what I'm actually doing and how I'm being judged for doing it, how I'm being perceived for doing it, and feeling that I don't measure up. I think, I look at other zero waste YouTubers, and their videos are so beautiful and so cinematic and aesthetically pleasing, and it's lovely to watch. My videos are never going to look like that. My life doesn't look like that, and it probably never will, because actually what I find in terms of the way that I follow the zero waste movement, and I do the environmentally friendly things, is that often the environmentally friendly things don't look nice and that's just the reality. So it is what it is, but it does make me feel sometimes like my content is less appealing to watch, even though I think it's more practical. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but I don't know, it's something that's been bothering me lately, and I wanted to have a sort of just sit down and formal rant essentially about how I'm feeling about it, and see whether or not there are other people out there that feel the same way that I do, and whether or not there are people that completely disagree with me, and that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing on a topic. I just think it's something that we need to be discussing. We need to be aware of, that there are these points of discord within the zero waste movement, and potentially these points of animosity, I think, particularly when it comes to accessibility, and financial accessibility being a large part of that as well. It's a very middle class pursuit. It's not necessarily as widely adopted or practiced in poorer situations, because actually buying into the aesthetic and the nice new wooden and stainless steel and glass things all the time and everything is just not attainable to most people. And to most people who are busy bees, who are working, who are raising kids, who are doing all of the things that people do in their everyday lives, don't necessarily have the time to put in to doing all the legwork and things to achieve the same goals on a really limited budget. If you can't just go on Amazon and buy a nice glass baby bottle or a nice new wooden toy, then it's more difficult. You've got to put more time and effort into trying to find them secondhand, upcycling things, doing all of this stuff. And I know that I spend an awful lot of my time doing such things, and I now have the time to do those things. Most of the time I'm in bed, so I have plenty of time to be scrolling on my phone through Facebook Marketplace ads, looking for secondhand whatever, researching how to make such and such, thinking about how I could achieve the things that I want to achieve, and planning and sourcing the resources and things that I need, the supplies and things that I need to do these projects. If I was still working, if I was as busy as most people are, I wouldn't necessarily be able to achieve the same things that I can achieve, mostly being bedbound. So you can only do what you can do, and you can only do the things that make sense in your lifestyle and in your situation. And I think it's just important that we recognise that, and we discuss this, and we have these open conversations. So please let me know in the comments section what you feel about this issue, whether you think I'm completely off bat, or whether you think that I've got a point and you agree with any of the things that I've said, and how it affects you and how it makes you feel about your own zero waste journey, or your journey with really any kind of activism or lifestyle choices and things that you're making for particular reasons, and the movements that surround those things as well. So yeah, definitely let me know in the comments what you think about this topic, because I'm really curious to know if I'm the only one that feels like this. So it's been quite a long video, so thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.